Hey there folks, and welcome to DL's workshop. Well, the FNAF movie is near. It's nearer than ever. We've seen some footages of the movie's animatronics and we've seen the Eclipse character in Help Wanted 2 area. By now FNAF produces lots of stuff. The games, the books, the toys, the clothes. But now we finally have the actual animatronics to appear in official FNAF media. But this time they weren't the first. Far from that actually. And today we're covering the history of real FNAF animatronics, starting with fan-made ones. This will be a sort of retrospective, and as a person who builds their own animatronics, I'm not only going to talk about the projects and their creators, but I'll also going to analyze the structure of animatronics, their mechs and their programming. So I ain't gonna talk about my animatronics here because it's not the point of today's video. And there are also so many talented and creative people over the FNAF fandom who also build their own animatronics, and I won't be able to talk about all of them. So that's it. I'm only going to mention the most well-known creators. All the creators will be linked in the description below this video, and I'm not monetizing it to avoid any issues with that. But enough rambling. Are you ready for the ride? Let's go. Technically, the first FNAF animatronics were made in 70s. We should have started with the very basics anyway. Creative Engineering Incorporated, run by famous Aaron Factor, produced plenty of original animatronic shows for the pizza places, with the very first characters being literally a bear named Friendly Freddy and a yellow rabbit named Willy Wabbit. I believe Scott Cawthon used some of these concepts for his iconic duo. They have some similarities after all. Plus we have the famous Country Bear Jamboree, and there are also some characters that look like our favorite Scary Bear. All these retro animatronics used pneumatics and hydraulics. They were fixed on the stage and were only able to perform pre-programmed movements while the pre-recorded audio sequence was playing. Their manufacturers pursued the goal of making their characters look like actual living creatures. That's the whole point of animatronics after all. And they did great. Creative Engineering's robots looks convincing and beautiful despite the fact it's been like 50 years. I've always been a big fan of Aaron Factor. This man definitely has to be written into the history of robotics. Then we're moving to 2015 to see the actual FNAF animatronics. One of the first to bring our favorite characters to the real world was Dr. Creepypasta. If you're old enough, you're sure to know them. I'm still under impression how they managed to build 5 full-sized metal creative engineering styled machines in just several months. It's unbelievable. Dr. Creepypasta's animatronics are powerful. Freddy, Foxy, and Springtrap have the human-like range of movements when it comes to their body, the head, and the arms. Every joint is movable and the animation looks smooth, especially in Foxy. In the Q&A, the creator revealed that Freddy Fazbear has a built-in computer and remote control. The computer is able to memorize the movements and then repeat them without a remote. That's a cool way to program the animation. Bonnie and Chica appear to be a bit more simple. They only have movable neck, body, jaw, and eyes. They're side characters in the show after all, and the most of attention goes to Freddy anyway. The next several years weren't that meaningful for the history of real FNAF animatronics. We had several guys building cool FNAF puppets, we've seen the rise of the regular Sauces and Lighting Grace's amazing cosplays, but what about the actual robots? Fast forward to 2020. You must remember GDS and their real Freddy Fazbear animatronic. The robot was pneumatically driven just like Dr. Creepypasta's ones. In the later vids, the creator revealed that they were using microcontrollers to program the movements. That animatronic was one of the very first FNAF-styled robot to use 3D printing to make the suit look identical to the canon one. They used the really dated Freddy model as a reference, but still changed its proportions a bit. But anyway, the character was very much recognizable. I think this guy has started a new era of real FNAF animatronics. Now the creators will also focus on making their robots look as close to the original as possible and not just working on movements. Speaking of movements, the same year Robotica Creatronics steps in with their project. 2020 was a really stuffy year. Here at DL Electronics we grew tired of comments we received. Every second person sent us to that channel telling us that we should learn from them. And that's for a good reason. Robotica Creatronics robots were interesting. They used servos instead of pneumatics. They used remotes instead of pre-programmed microcontrollers. They used easily accessible materials instead of metal and plastic. It was so simple and genius at the same time. Since every movement was controlled manually, the robots moved smooth and lifelike. This guy sure knows what animatronics is about. He also was the first to make leg joints movable. There weren't any mechanism there, but now they finally can give Bonnie a day off and put them on a couch. Or, make it look like he's walking. After that, we're finally moving to the present. Vomited Thoughts, being one of the most promising animatronic builder of today's FNAF fandom. They combine all the ingredients needed to make cool FNAF animatronics. They use 3D printing to make them look identical to the game ones. They print pretty much every detail for the animatronic in contrast to the GDA's Freddy with only few suit parts printed. That really helps when it comes to designing unique parts and that are difficult to make from other materials. They use combination of remotes and microcontroller to test the movement range. There's also a RLA project. They also use the newest techs and concepts for the animatronics. They combine more of this, adding pneumatics and fabric covering to make the characters look even more close to the original. Biomakers and Dusters also tried themselves in building FNAF characters, and this one looks the most durable and factory made. It seems like we've reached the goal. The fans have built the most accurate replicas of Freddy and friends. But no, we're going even further. Technofer is designing a real-life spring-lock technology to replicate the great and terrible spring-lock suit concept. Heck, it's just left to code AI and build proper walking mechs and FNAF will be 100% real. And finally, we're talking about the animatronics made for the FNAF movie, the official replicas of these characters. To tell the truth, it was a surprise for me. Why would they build real animatronics for filming while they can just use suited actors or CGI? Well, actually, they do use suited actors, and I believe they appear in 80% sense with Freddy and his friends appearing on screen, since the robots just can't perform all the movements needed, like they can't make them run, crawl the dance, etc. And the CGI isn't the worst way to go. Even the CGI in FNAF fan-made movies looked convincing. The Bubblegum Monsters' FNAF movie is the best example of that. But they still build real animatronics, whatever. We know that Jim Henson's Creature Shop is responsible for creating these guys. They have a really long history with the movie industry, so we should have expected the characters to look great. And they pretty much do. Of course, there are some people who dislike the movie designs, but I think they're cool. The suits look just perfect. They're catching the intended atmosphere, they're close enough to the game ones, they look a bit messy, and that's all we need for the setting. As for the movements and mechs, we haven't seen much of these characters yet, but knowing the experience of Jim Henson's Creature Shop, I'm sure they won't disappoint us. So there you go, that's the whole history of real FNAF animatronics. That's amazing how the fan base insists on bringing these characters to life, not through cosplays like any other fandoms, but through trying to replicate the very character. The animatronics is popular like in the 70s, and it's inspiring people to create. Heck, even I got into robotics thanks to FNAF. If they continue like this, I'll be making a similar video about real Freddy Fazbear pizza places in a decade or less. Well, let's just see what happens next. See you around.